Roosevelt County and all of eastern New Mexico. This video, this interview that we're about to conduct has to do with you. If you are very familiar with the National Interest Energy Transmission Corridor, that's a mouthful. This is for you. Many of you have been paying attention to this issue probably since about February when it first came to light. February, you think, Commissioner? January, February. It's been in action, as far as we know, since December, and people only started finding out about it since the first of the year, and it's been a very hot topic because of how it affects people's private property rights. It affects us as Americans in terms of overreach of our government in not doing and following things the way that they're supposed to, and making Americans feel like, gosh, we've been lowered to that of serfs almost. So it's very frustrating. And these people that are sitting at the table are probably some of the most knowledgeable people about this because they have recently made a trip to Washington, D.C. in order to fight for the people of eastern New Mexico. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Roy Lee Criswell. Been a resident in Roosevelt County for the last 35 years. Currently the commissioner for District 3. And I reside in Pelt, New Mexico.
I'm Annie Hoagland. I'm the clerk in Curry County, and I'm the current New Mexico County's president. That's our association of counties representing all 33. And my husband and I live in the unincorporated area of the county southeast of Clovis.
Very good. Well, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for the trip that you made on behalf of all of us, because we all know Washington, D.C. is far and expensive. So thank you so much for going on behalf of this. So we're going to back up for just a moment. We're going to back up because there might be a few people that have never heard about this issue yet. And as we talk about this, one of the things I would like to do is tie for people, even though you may not live in this corridor that we're about to talk about, it's still going to affect you. If it affects your neighbor, it's going to affect you. If they're going to come after one person, don't be surprised if eventually they're going to come after you. So you stand a good reason to stand up for your neighbors when a neighbor is being affected by something. So let's back up and talk about the energy corridor, kind of how you guys found out about it, what you had learned up until your trip to Washington, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you learned at that trip.
Yes, this National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor come to my attention in October of last year. We were at a meeting in Littlefield, Texas on the Muleshoe Wildlife Refuge expansion, and a friend of mine from Colorado named Shad Sullivan, he was at that meeting, and after that meeting was over with, he says, well, we got another fight on our hands. It's called the National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor. Well, it started out coming across Oklahoma and Kansas, and they got that stopped, I want to say the last part of November. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was over with. And anyway, and then all of a sudden, it's back on the radar, come back on the radar about the second week of January. I got a phone call, and it was back on. And Oklahoma and Kansas was out of it, but here we were, Colorado, coming down the eastern side of New Mexico. And so that's when I got light of it, and I was like, we need to get on this. And this is going to affect a lot of us here in Roosevelt County. Matter of fact, it's going to affect 1,017 landowners here in Roosevelt County. So, and it's going to affect some municipalities as far as where their water is coming from, the well fields and stuff. And so anyway, that's the reason why trying to get this out there. And we had some meetings. We had a meeting here in Portales there 1st February, had a meeting in Clovis, and then attended a meeting. We went to another meeting out there in Red Osa, and then me and Annie attended a meeting up in Clayton about this, and finding out a little bit, I found out something new at every meeting, and that's the reason why I went to so many of them, to try to find out as much as I could. And so, and that's the reason why my interest is really high in this, because it's affect me being my 5th generation rancher here in Roosevelt County, is something that's going to affect us. And so, and it's affected me personally, along with lots of residents. And so
So about how many counties are affected in New Mexico?
I think there's 7 counties, isn't that right? I think there's 7 counties. There's Union, Quay, Curry, Roosevelt, Lee, Eddy, Chaves, and Otero counties that are being affected.
With the current line that's written out.
Right, because at any moment, it could change. We
Yes.
don't know if it will or not. They've not really said anything about that. And so we're also talking about, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about over 8 million acres. Is that right? Something like that?
It's going to be 1.8 million
1.8.
acres here in New Mexico alone is what's going to be affected. And it's
I've been
corridor,
reported.
it's a 5-mile wide easement with and in the proposal, it is written where they have the option to take up as much as 125-mile easement
Okay, so
with this corridor.
which is one of the biggest sticking points with people, is why do they need that much land? Is that correct? Am I correct on that? What people are upset
Right.
about? Because in a normal transmission line of that size, my husband works for an electric co-op, and he said one transmission of that size, you're talking about 300, 600 feet.
Yeah, or
wide.
200.
Yeah, 200 to 600 feet, depending on how big the transmission line is. But we're talking about 5 miles wide to possibly 125 miles wide. Why do they need all of that land? That's one of the questions, is it not?
It does believe so, and so kind of going back to how we kind of learned about this, I was in December, I was up in Albuquerque for a New Mexico County's event. It was our Better Informed Public Officials. So when new county officials come in, they get to go to this event, and it's a conference where they get to go through all these trainings. And at the same time, the New Mexico cattle growers were meeting up there in Albuquerque, and a commissioner friend in Otero, Vicki Marquardt, she was receiving an award, and so Roosevelt County Commissioner Tina Dixon was presenting that award. So I didn't have anything that evening, and I said, oh, hey, I'll go over there with you. And, I sat down, of course, you start running into commissioners, and I ran into Jerry Rush from Quay. And she said, hey, have you guys in Curry, has your commission, asked for any more information on this NHTSA, which, everybody kind of, some people say NHTSA, whatever. And she asked, and I said, I guess I don't really know what you're talking about. And then, kind of a couple weeks went on, and I kind of did some research, but I thought, well, if this was such a big deal, wouldn't I have heard about it?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't I know something if it's this big? And I thought, no, it just must be nothing. And then right before the legislative session began, we were preparing our agenda for a New Mexico County's board meeting that we have at our conference, and that's actually the first day of the legislative session. And Bronson Korn, president of New Mexico Cattle Growers, reached out and said, hey, I'd like to present to the board, regarding NHTSA. And I said, please, because so many of us had so many questions and didn't really understand what is really going on here. And so then at that point, a lot of us actually read the Federal Register and started reading, what are the studies they say they have out or things like that, and, really started doing our research on it. And then, as you mentioned, I went with you to some of them, saw you there, and saw so many other county commissioners, which was awesome. And other county officials at the meetings hosted in part with New Mexico cattle growers, and then our county government and any municipalities that kind of jumped on there too. And I think there was a lot of good feedback from landowners too on helping us get better questions to reach out to those who may be able to answer. And then this meeting came up, or this trip to DC to hopefully try to get some answers. And I just big time just want to give credit to Roy Lee.
Mm-hmm.
He has worked his tail off.
He's fought the fight so far,
Yes,
hasn't he?
and New Mexico cattle growers.
Yes, they have.
Oh my goodness,
Mm-hmm.
they are amazing. Shameless plug, they are amazing. Get your membership.
Right. So before we get to your trip, you brought up an interesting point. You said that the local governments
Mhm.
were starting to reach out to the landowners to ask them questions
Yes.
and to see. So this is getting to the second major issue of this whole thing,
Right.
and that is that the government has not said anything.
Yeah, no
It seems
respect.
secretive.
Yep.
When people ask questions, there's no real answers coming, and and now people are also concerned about eminent domain. That's always a scary thing should be for any American, quite frankly, but especially, you know, these large property owners and things. That's a very real concern, and we know the government has used it before. There's a provision for it in the United States Constitution, certain things that they must do and apply. But one of the things is I learned, and I learned it from the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association when they came to Portales, and they said there is a process. First, the government is supposed to go directly first to the landowners and make their pitch, and either they get permission or they don't. If they say no, and that's not satisfactory, then their next is their county commissioner. And then if they don't get the answer they like from the county commission, then they can appeal to the state. And if that doesn't work, they can appeal, of course, to the federal government when eminent domain can kick in.
Due process.
Yes, due process, absolutely. And there are, and even our own state has rules and laws regarding eminent domain, but we don't have anybody from the DOE, the Department of Energy, talking to any property owners. To have any property owners been personally visited by anybody representing the government or the energy department, state or national?
So, not that I'm aware of, and I understand, you know, that this quarter, although not designated yet at this time, you know, but it is that public-private partnership that gets touted a lot, and so who knows as far as the, you know, private communication. And I think that's a big point here too, is that, you know, local governments, our county governments, we don't oppose renewable energy. We don't oppose infrastructure.
Right.
We want to protect the interests of our landowners. We want to protect the interests of our revenues, which come from property taxes. That's it. You know, municipalities get GRT, and, you know, we may get slivers of certain things here and there in grant funding, but our main source of revenue in counties is our property taxes. And the impact that this could potentially have on our property taxes is huge.
It's huge.
You know, and that, again, kind of like what you were talking about, is the impact that it might have on people who may not be, you know, right in this current designation proposal. It still can affect them. You know, the less we receive for property taxes, that impacts your emergency services. That, you know, that impacts everything. And, you know, of course, this might come with a higher risk of fire danger. You know, what do we do for our first responders? How do we afford to do all of that if we don't get our property taxes? And so that was kind of the stance of the local governments, county government, saying, hey, look, we have a dog in the fight here, and you guys haven't even, you know, talked to us about our land use plans.
Right.
Or anything like that, which is also required. You know, the NEPA study. None of those things have been conducted yet.
Okay, so let's back up just a moment, because some people may have never heard about a NEPA study or the land use plan. Can one or both of you kind of expound on what is a land use plan? Maybe Commissioner.
I'll let a commissioner.
Yeah, because this is in their wheelhouse. A
This is yours.
land use plan is in their wheelhouse, and we also have a water and soil conservation district.
Correct.
They also deal very much, and I will, you know, hats off to them as well. They've been very engaged.
Absolutely.
And want to have a, as they often say, a seat at the table. They want to know what's going on. They want to be involved in a lot of this stuff. So, Commissioner Criswell, will you kind of explain to us what a land use plan is and its function?
The land use agreements is a guideline for what entities can come in and how they can come in and what they can do to the land. There's certain aspects they can only do certain things, and we're looking at, Roosevelt County is looking at their land use plan right now. I think there's some things we need to change, and the soil and water conservation, we're trying to get together and come up and look at our land use plan to see if we need to put in some stuff in there. Like the maintenance deal, like for me as a county commissioner, one of the main things I want to change our land use plan is I don't want a disposal ground for these wind turbines, solar fields, when they have to dismantle these things and dispose them. Like you go down to Sweetwater, Texas, for example, they got a huge graveyard for wind turbine blades, and they're digging big old holes, putting them in there, and then covering them up. And there's also just where they're just stacking them out there. And so I'm looking in to see if we can't change up our land use plan to keep from those things. Maybe a little prevention is what I'm looking for, I guess. But as far as the land use plan, that's some of the things, you know. And yes, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things I need to learn about our land use plan. I by no means know exactly what they can do, what they can't do. I don't know exactly what all's in that land use plan. That, I forget how many pages. There's a lot. And so, yes, I need to be more educated. I will admit, I need to have more education of our land use plan, but I do know there's certain things that's not in there I would like to get in there. And that land use plan is the biggest deal is a coordination where they have to come to us to coordinate about what they're doing. And that's the biggest thing about in those land use plans you put in there is where they have to come to the county to coordinate.
And so technically, by definition, then, the county should be able to look at their land use plan and say, does what you're proposing fit in
Yes.
what this land plan says we will accept? When we did our it was before, I don't think you've been elected yet, when we did the anti-abortion ordinance. Were you on that?
Yes.
Okay, it was just after. Yeah, we'd started it with the former one, but you helped us see it through. But I remember looking I had never known that there was such a thing as a land use plan. Because the first thing we tried to do is maybe look at zoning laws. I don't want to get off on the subject, but we looked at the zoning laws. To do that, we got the land use plan out. And I was astounded at how detailed it was, what it allowed for. I was thrilled as a resident of Roosevelt County to see that it took into consideration people's the county's religious and ethical and moral beliefs and that sort of thing, and what we would allow in and that sort of thing. So yes, the land use plan ideally is supposed to be a very important part of this whole thing. Yeah, and
Very
it's meant to
important
protect.
tool. It is a tool.
Absolutely, it's meant to protect the county against anything that we don't want in here. So
Right.
I'm super glad that you guys are going to be looking at that and maybe making changes as necessary. So I think that's going to get us up to your trip to Washington, which I know very many people were aware that you guys went, and they have been very excited, almost on the edge of their seat of their pants, to find out what it is you guys found out. So when did you go? Who did you talk to? And what was the culminating result of your trip?
I believe it was May 14th through 16th, I believe it was.
Well, that's what it was supposed to be, and then of course Ronnie
Yeah.
and I got stuck.
We got stuck at the airport.
Oh my gosh.
But,
That's a long story. It's a pretty good one.
It was a good story.
Uh,
But May 14th, I believe it was, when we flew out.
hit the ground running.
We did, and I want to give thanks to Jerry Rush, County Commissioner, Quay County, Red Miller, County Commissioner from Union County, Cliff Copeland, cattle growers, he's vice president of that region, northeastern region up there. Jeff Decker, southeastern region, vice president. I want to give, and then Michael Perry from Chaves County, county commissioner. We went up there and give many thanks to
Queen Michelle.
Yes, and
She's
I'll tell you,
the best.
that's right. If it wasn't for Michelle Frost,
We're not talking about Michelle Lujan Grisham,
No.
right? Okay, just
We're-
want to make sure everybody's clear.
Cattle Growers has a secretary. Her name is Michelle Frost Maynard.
She's the
I'm gonna
best.
tell you, she's the bomb. But I called Brunson Corn. We'll do this back up there in April. Around April 20th, I was in Las Cruces, and anyway, I was sitting there thinking. I woke up one morning, we was at the motel, and I woke up that morning and thought, we're not getting nothing done. We're not getting nothing done. So I called Brunson Corn up. I said, Brunson, he's president of Cattle Growers. I said, Brunson, I said, I feel like we need to go to D.C. We need to get up there, do something. He agreed. He says, let me get on it. And this was maybe a Saturday morning. That next Monday morning, I got a phone call that says, how are these dates? Look, and I gave him Sunday, and we set some dates. And I'm telling you that Michelle Frost Maynard, she got on it. She coordinated these meetings, and my hat's off to her, and my hat's off to the Cattle Growers Association for helping us out on this deal.
And that's following all of the
Yes.
meetings that she continued to request on behalf of New Mexico cattle growers for DOE to come here.
Wow.
And so counties were sending requests for them to come here. Michelle was sending requests for them to come here. And either they were choosing not to, but we also do understand that there were some issues with travel and stuff like that. So, of course, cutting unnecessary spending and things also means delaying trips and stuff for right now, kind of putting a hard stop to that. So we do understand that there were some challenges for different agency staff to travel outside of DC to come here. So do want to recognize that. I'm hopeful that that was the reason they were not responsive to coming to our state. But either way, that's kind of what triggered the whole idea of, all right, we'll take it to you.
In the transition between the two administrations, I think that transition period in there
still happening.
And it's still going on, and there's so much happening. But I do know Jerry Rush with Quay County and guys at Union County, they did have a phone call meeting with a representative from DOE at one time, and so that was the only meeting that was reached out, and that was in January, the very first meeting, and so we all went to try to reach out. We all went to reaching out to them, trying to get them to come down. But anyway, we went to DC. We had, I'll tell you what, Michelle set up some meetings. Our very first, we flew out of Lubbock. We get up there about 3 o'clock that evening. And,
mind you, we left at 3 a.m.
Yeah, and we get up there.
We were tired.
Yes, and our first, and I mean, we hadn't been in DC an hour, and we had a meeting with Ben Ray Lujan office.
The senior policy advisor up there.
And I tell you, very receptive. Said that he listened to our concerns, and matter of fact, we got a letter, and I did not know this letter was written. I did not know nothing about it. This letter was written on March 12th, and I can read it to you. It says, addressed to the Honorable Chris Wright, Secretary of Energy, U.S. Department of Energy. It says, Mr. Secretary, I'm writing to request that you offer my constituents in New Mexico more clarity and engagement on the National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor designation process. Specifically, I ask that you extend the deadline from April 15th, 2025, offer my constituents and elected officials a public briefing, and provide more clarity about the NETC process and any potential plans for withdrawing private lands. There has been a great deal of confusion about the NETC designation would mean and about how New Mexicans can participate in the process to voice their opinions about transmission needs in eastern New Mexico. Many New Mexicans have come to my office concerned that the federal government plans to take rights away for up to 15 miles wide in the proposed southwestern grid connecting corridor. My preliminary understanding of the NETC process is that this is a process to determine if transmission is needed in different parts of the United States, including Colorado, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, and that no determination to build new transmission is being made. Unfortunately, my office has been unable to confirm this understanding or to engage directly with anyone from the Department of Energy on this issue because of the Trump administration's halt on any external engagements. This is unacceptable and must change immediately. Eastern New Mexico is populated by many ranchers, farmers, and agricultural workers who prioritize rural and quiet living. Some of these communities live off the electric grid or anonymously without any need or desire for new transmission projects through their property. Cattle ranchers depend on their land remaining undisturbed to ensure grass is available for grazing. They're all concerned about building transmission through their land that would not benefit them or their communities. Understanding the sensitive nature of these issues, I urge you to take the following actions. Ensure that my office is given a direct contact to engage with the NETC process, extend the deadline for public comments, provide an opportunity for public and elected officials in New Mexico to have a briefing and ask questions, and provide more clarity about any potential plans for withdrawing private lands. Full transparency and active engagement on the NETC process is needed to ensure the public has every opportunity to be informed and heard. Sincerely, Ben Ray Lujan, United States Senator. So, was in there, like I said, they're very, very positive, very receptive to us. He understood what was asked for, and we, over and over, we stressed to him that we are not against new transmission lines going up. We're only against
Or any infrastructure.
or
related.
any infrastructure.
Sure,
We're not
exactly.
against that infrastructure.
And we support the income
Yes.
opportunities that this does provide to our public landowners. We support
Yes.
those private negotiations with landowners.
And so we stress to them that we are not against new infrastructure, but we are against the 5-mile easement and up to 125 miles. And the multi-use easement, what they're calling it.
Forever.
And it's forever, for perpetuity. And so, and they understood that. He understood it, and he said that Ben Ray understood that, and he also understood that there was no coordination with us, and let's don't forget this one blanket NEPA study that they're going to do from top
What
of
does
the
NEPA stand for? Do you remember?
environmental management protection act, I guess. National Environmental Protection Act, right?
That sounds good. Let's go with that for now.
I think
Then
that's
they
right.
has environmental impact.
Yeah, and they have to. There's several assessments they do with that. That's in there. We're talking health, environment,
Okay.
study. The land, and so anyway, there's several.
Economic, culture, everything.
Right, and so, but they're only going to do one of those. They're going to use a one blanket NEPA, and that's going to cover from northern New Mexico all the way down to southern New Mexico, all the way out there to White Sands Missile Range, where that's going to affect. And so there's a lot of difference, in that country. So he Ben Ray and them, his staff, they understood it, and I'm telling you, I come out of there with a great positive attitude. I was, very thrilled how receptive they were to us, and and so it was a very positive meeting, and so we were happy, and the next morning,
That was the big one.
the
That was the one.
next morning we met with the Department of Energy
Oh, good. Okay.
and
Specifically the grid deployment.
the Grid
office.
Deployment Office, Joe Alexander, right?
Yep, the chief of staff.
Chief of Staff for the Grid Development Office. And very receptive. We learned that there was 1,100 projects that are on the table
That they inherited.
that they inherited. And so
It's gonna take time.
it's going to take it. He said it's going to take time. And he knew where New Mexico was. And that meant more to me than anything, that he knew where we was at. He knew exactly our concerns. He's been here. And so I'm ready to go home.
Yeah.
Very, very, I've got a lot of faith that they heard us. And I'm telling you, like I say, it's very positive. Now, did we find out any answers? No, but he wasn't there to answer, he couldn't answer our questions.
I think they also got to learn our questions. So,
Yeah.
and just so everybody knows, it was interesting. So the senior advisor, Tina Francone, she was in there. She's a former county commissioner in Colorado. But hearing her say, "We hear you. We are reading your emails." They are seeing
Yes.
it. They're hearing everybody. Like that was
Good.
that was
Yes.
huge. Like for me, it was like,
It-
wow, these aren't just going into no man's land, the
Right.
internet. 'Cause we don't know.
Because a lot of people, that's why they won't engage with their government. They think they're just going to be ignored,
Yeah.
or they're not going to
That's
get
right.
the result that they want.
They're
So why bother
hearing.
Right.
anyway?
And
But
so-
they are. So that's
That
a
was
good
Yeah,
encouragement
it's
news.
very
to engage.
encouraging.
They are listening. This administration.
and-
is listening.
Yes.
And them telling us that they read the comments, they've read those emails, that meant something
That's
to me.
huge. That's actually- that's huge.
It was very optimistic.
Yes.
And, but anyway, like I say, it was very positive.
And the chief of staff himself, his family, they are producers. So
Yes.
I believe it was Illinois. Was it Illinois or Iowa that he was from originally? I'm so sorry.
Right.
I should probably know that. But he comes from an ag background. He actually was with the USDA in Trump 45. So not only does he actually know where we're at on the map, he understands and appreciates rural America.
Right.
and what
And what's
our
at
culture
stake.
is.
Right.
Yep.
For us.
Yes,
Right.
Right.
everything that we represent and know and have, and he understood that. And then
That's great.
I don't know if it's silly to bring up or not, but you know, if you've ever gone to a meeting and you know they're like, oh, they kind of look at their watch and they're like, well, that's time. Bye, see you later. Hand them your card and they push you out, and you think, oh, okay. Well, when we got done with that meeting, Mr. Alexander, he took everybody kind of out into the hallway, and at one point I walked up and I said, hey, so you said you've been to our part of the world before, you know, what did you go down there for? And as Rolly mentioned, you know, he'd come down because he had a family or something, who knows, and love it.
Family and love it.
And so Jerry Rush, she had, on her way to the airport, she'd taken a picture of a beautiful sunrise behind some wind turbines, and it's beautiful, and she appreciates that infrastructure. We appreciate that infrastructure. And so she was showing him, you know, like, this is what we currently have, and, you know, to see the land. And he says, I know. I've been there. I know. And it was pretty moving. It kind of
Assuring.
It was. And then, I mean, down to walking us outside, like, and he was so, I mean, I
That is
didn't
so
take
good to hear.
This guy they are hearing us. And I really appreciated that time with them. And, you know, because again, yeah, why engage? Because sometimes you think, well, it's going to fall on deaf ears. Why would I bother?
Mm-hmm.
And there was no rush feeling.
No.
We were not rushed.
We
At
spent quite a
any-
bit of time in
yes.
there, almost to the point of being late to the next one.
And like I say, it was, and that's what made us feel good. That's what made me feel really good about it. You know, we weren't rushed, and he took the time and wanted to visit with us after the meeting out there in the hall. You know, and so like I say, it was my first trip up there. It's most positive thing.
Honestly, after that one, I was like, well, let's go home.
Yes, you know.
I mean, I trust my intuition. I know I have it for a reason, and when I tell you, I got a very good feeling in there.
Good.
Really good feeling. You know, it's very optimistic. The optimism was really high walking out of that office.
So did Senator Lujan's or the DOE's office, did they ever say anything about when to expect to hear anything from them in the future? I know everything's kind of like.
That was kind of it. It was more like, don't expect to hear from us right away because of these 1,100 projects that we've now inherited and we have to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get that vibe, like, you know, keep reaching out, keep staying in the loop, but I'm not going to have an answer for you tomorrow.
Okay.
But and he did say, you showing up here, y'all
He did,
taking the time
actually.
to come up here to
He
express
pointed
your
that out a
concern.
couple times.
You know, he kept saying it, you know, this, you know, we're going to know what this project is when we get to it. And I kind of got the feeling, he didn't say it, but I kind of got the feeling maybe it might become a more prioritized, you know, instead of being on the 1,999, you know, project down there since there's 1,100 of them, maybe we'll get moved up. And so, and get looked at, you know, but he was very appreciative that we took the time and spent the time and the money
He
going
did
up
note
there.
the money. He was
Yes.
like,
It's expensive. One of the
is.
most expensive places
And
in the country.
like I say, and he's very receptive of it, you know.
So are you saying that it pays for citizens to engage with their elected officials?
yes.
It
Yes,
does it not?
It does.
This is something that we've been trying to encourage people, just even here in Roosevelt County. Do not underestimate the power of a phone call, even more so taking the time or spending the money if necessary to go look at them face to face, because it tells them how serious you are about it, especially if you can talk intelligently about it, which I know both of you do, passionately about it, which I know this gentleman definitely did.
Yeah, I'm not real educated. I'm not very articulate.
I am not educated.
I was very articulate.
I'll tell you, you know, I did a lot of listening up there.
That's powerful.
I did
Yeah.
too, and I
That's
think that was
powerful.
the good part too, is maybe our questions didn't get answered directly.
Mm-hmm.
But they got to hear those questions over and over and over to say, what would this be used for? When, you know, those really specific questions, they really heard them. So not only were they getting them on email and everything else, they heard us say, and they got our big ask. Our big ask was rescind this.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, that was our big ask when we met with the grid deployment office.
And we expressed to the grid deal, you know, hey, there's private entities right now going through the process of putting up new transmission lines.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
And other infrastructure,
and
and
other
other great
that's
projects with
not-
renewables.
we're not against this.
Right,
But there's entities right now that are already doing this,
Mhm.
you know, and
So
so
why?
we were, you know, my biggest deal, you know, my biggest, you know, we just kind of told them, please rescind this and let those private entities go ahead and put in the infrastructure.
Mhm.
If they see a need for it, they're going to put it in.
Mhm.
And so, there's projects going on right now, especially in southern part of Roosevelt County. But anyway, and we expressed to them that we're not against any of that. And they were very, like I say, he listened and he agreed, and he could, you know, like I say, he couldn't give us no definite answers, but he listened. And one thing about it, they took notes.
I was actually
And
going to
so
ask
that- and
that
that's
a minute
very-
ago.
you know,
I was like, did they
Yes,
listen?
that's
Or
very,
did they take
but
notes?
that's
They
very
totally
positive.
did.
That's awesome.
positive.
At
That
every
is
meeting we
awesome.
went to.
Yes, every
That's
meeting.
great.
That was awesome.
It was, you know, they were taking our notes. They were writing down our questions, writing down our concerns, and that's like very positive. You know, very positive.
That's fantastic.
And so we went to the other meetings, and all that.
Yeah, definitely. So the meeting that we went to after that one, we went and met with the National Resources and Environment team from the USDA, and I think kind of the main focus of that one too, because obviously this isn't the only issue we're all facing right now. A big topic of discussion was, of course, the screwworm, the Mexican gray wolf on the other side of our state, but we do care about our neighbors.
Yes.
Just like they care about us, several counties over in that direction also adopted resolutions in support of us in opposition of this, months ago. So I thought, as counties, we are 33 strong. We do stick together. And then there were a couple of other ag-related issues that were brought up, their initiatives of cattle growers. And so those things were discussed there. And wow, what a team the USDA has right now.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness, that's very exciting. We all know very exciting. And then that afternoon, we kind of had to split up because there were so many meetings scheduled that, we thought, okay, group can go here, group can go here. And I went with Roy Lee and Michael Perry from Chavez.
Right.
And then a couple of the landowners that went up, we went and spoke with Congressman Jody Arrington's staff. And, they were also really receptive and kind of talked about maybe a little bit of, strategy and have you reached out to this person and stuff like that. And they were, and then I know you guys also kind of visited more about Muleshoe.
Right. Well, I'll back up just a minute. Jody Arrington was big in stopping the Muleshoe wildlife expansion over there in Bailey County and Roosevelt County, the Gruya National Wildlife Refuge out here east of Arch on the state line. Jody Arrington was big in getting that stopped.
And was that a 1,000%, or what was the percentage of land increase for that?
Oh,
I think it was like
I want to say
1,000
1,000 times. It's supposed that deal was like 6,300 acres total deal, and it's going to grow to 700,000.
Yeah.
So he is very that put it at 1,000 times increasement, the largest increasement that there's been of anything like that. And so, but Jody Arrington was really big in that. So we went and visited him and talked to him about that, and totally appreciative we were about that. And anyway, and so that office was very receptive.
Talk to us about the budget process, kind of some things there, and so they were. And another thing, actually, speaking of Congressman Jody Arrington's office, when we were at the DOE Great Deployment Office, they did point out that Congresswoman Laura Boebert from Colorado, they had heard from her several times too, and they made sure that we knew and told us you need to thank her.
Wow.
They did say that out loud. Those words came out of their mouth. And so that's kind of just another thing, and she has a part in the budget process and stuff too, so we do appreciate,
That's fantastic.
partnership
So
there.
maybe the Roosevelt County Commission may be sending an official letter to
Say thank
Representative
you.
Boebert soon.
Thank you, baby.
And Arrington and
Yes.
Yes,
I'm
all
telling
of these.
all of the above.
Yes.
All of
yes.
us need to, and there's some other issues that, that he's going to help, that they're going to help us fight, that are, some of these coming in here, I'll bring up one. The government overreach and these programs that are going in for perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
And so Texas is new to those kind of programs, and they're new to the government overreach over there because. Maybe the government really doesn't mess with Texas.
So that's kind of what we were going to say.
And so
they know better, but they know in New Mexico.
Right,
we're
easy prey. We're easy prey.
Just sneak in there.
We're very easy prey because 60% of our land is owned is federal, state owned.
Yes. But I will also add too, though, and maybe we're lax on certain regulations. And this is personal right now. Personal opinion of Annie Hoagland is that one of the reasons of the many reasons I love living in New Mexico is it's our land and we do what we want. Because we don't have those crazy regulations. But then sometimes I'm wondering, man, would that protect us right now? I don't know, don't want it. Again, like I said earlier, I live in the unincorporated area of Curry County. We have no planning and zoning. You do what you want on your land.
Same with
and that's how New
Roosevelt
Mexico
County.
is. A lot of New Mexico is like that. And so I think that's another reason maybe we are an easy target. Again, personal opinion, but
That's an
anyway,
interesting point you make, though. It really is a good point.
But then the next one after that, so then actually that evening, so that took us to about 4 o'clock, and right across the street from where we walked out, of course, Capitol's right there, and my friend hadn't seen it, and I said, hey, we're going to take you over there real fast, and then of course he meets a congressman from North Carolina, and this typical
work in the city.
So the people that didn't know where Roosevelt County is, they know where it's at.
They know where it is now.
That's famous, Commissioner. Thank you.
But the biggest deal was it's a small world.
It is.
He knew.
We have a mutual
friend over there of Annie. Annie has a mutual friend in North Carolina
See,
that he was really good friends with.
God
winks.
That's right.
Yes.
God is just directing paths.
Thank
you, Jesus, directing paths.
And
that's miraculous.
Yes,
it was like Washington, D.C.
Fun.
At that moment, you cross paths. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, he comes walking back down over with this whole group of people, and I'm like, only Lily would do that.
Because I took off from them. They were standing off over there, and I said, I'm going over here to the Capitol. I got to go see this. And I crawled up the steps as high as I could before the guard stopped me, and I was taking it all in. I was looking at it, and then time to leave. I come back down, and sure enough, there's this congressman, and I just kind of took off together, and I just went chatting with him, and we had a good chat all the way back. And like I said, then they shared a mutual acquaintance and
called him on speakerphone there, and it was just a whole thing.
It tickled me. She said, "Yeah, you know this guy," and he said, "Well, yeah, let me call him up." He just gets his phone out and calls him up.
Yeah.
And,
nice.
It was
that's
neat.
Amazing.
And he took and this is the deal up there, the vibe I got.
It's different.
Yes, and he took the time to sit there and visit with us, and he had a staff member.
They were trying to pull him off.
He had a staff member saying, "We gotta go. We gotta go."
Right.
He paid no attention to her. And another guy that was with him, he paid no attention to him. He just he made the phone call. They got the chat on the phone, and
awesome.
She'd walk back up there and tug on his little arm, and he just got to kind of look at her, and he said, "We gotta go," and he just kept chatting.
It's this vibe of it's a different environment.
It's just it was a really neat vibe.
Wonderful.
And very positive. Like I've been saying, it was very positive up there. And
it was. And then the next morning we had a meeting with staff from the House Committee on Natural Resources. And the gentleman that we met with, the staff director, Rob McGregor, he actually used to work for Steve Pierce. And so, of course, he knew right where we were on the map. So one more time, meeting these people, we're like, I know exactly where you're at.
Yes.
Yeah, I drove down that highway I don't know how many times.
Wow.
Yes.
So that's
amazing.
It was cool. And that meeting was more, again, for more strategy stuff, and have you guys tried this? Have you guys tried this? And that was really awesome. And again, one of those meetings with really no timeline. They just sat and continued to help us.
That's amazing.
And then there were some other meetings that he and I didn't make it to. Again, we were supposed to head out. I guess it was Friday afternoon, on the 16th, which didn't happen. But the other meetings, of course, Senator Heinrich's staff, Congresswoman Teresa Ledger Fernandez's staff, Congressman Gabe Vasquez's staff, Senator Josh Hawley, and Department of Interior Deputy Secretary. So it was we were spread out, trying to make meeting after meeting, and it was fun.
Wow.
It felt actually different and good to be heard, and I know that that's probably not what a lot of people want to hear when they're so concerned about this. But I mean, it was at the point where, here I was losing sleep over this stuff, and still do, and still worry and wonder. But and thankfully, as it currently stands, I'm about a mile east of where it's at. But either way, I mean,
wow.
It's stuff that just really makes you wonder, and just thinking about the future of the landscape, the future of all of it. And so anyhow, my intuition tells me that there's still hope for everybody, and keep engaging.
That's right. And it sounds to me like you did get some indirect or nonverbal answers and advice and help. And I mean, I just listening to your visit, because when we first started talking before the camera started rolling, the way you guys were sharing, I was like, man, it just kind of sounded like wah, wah, wah. But then as you guys got talking about it, I was like, wow, the Lord really orchestrated something really great.
He works.
And the favor of God is on it, and that we can all rest assured in that right now. May not have the answers that we were hoping for, thinking we were going to get right away, or that you guys were going to get, but God's in it, and He's telling us, I'm in it, I'm in it, I'm in it.
Yep.
You can rest. So
I'd like to encourage citizens of Roosevelt County, citizens of Portales, to engage with the city of Portales as councilman.
Yes.
And and see if we can't get a little involvement with them here in Portales, because it's going to affect the city of Portales.
And why is that? Because we barely went over, and I was going to have you go back and say it again, but you're bringing it up. Why is it Portales needs to be concerned about this?
It's their water that's going over their water field, out there, the well field at Portales, and it's a concern. It's like the village of Dora. It's going to take in their water. They're out there where their village water well is. It's going to. I mean, their water is right dab in the middle of this designated corridor easement, and it's a worry. We don't know what might happen to those rights or that property right there, and so I'd like to encourage it. The more we can get people to help us with this fight, the more we can get done. And so anyway, I'd like to encourage the citizens of Portales to engage with their city councilman and see if we can't, get them to join the fight with us.
Absolutely.
And I know there's a lot, every municipality, they've got their own battles, and I know there's a lot of battles going on. Sure. But we have to take the time and and I ain't say prioritize, but maybe try to fight as many of these battles as we can, because the more that join the fight, the more we can get done. And so.
Well, and it won't be the first. It's not the first one, and it won't be the last.
It's not going to be the last one.
Right.
It will not be the last one.
That's the tough thing, but that's the thing, is we can learn lessons through this one, and we can keep working together and build those relationships and partnerships moving forward, because, especially with term limits at counties, you're going to have a change in administration in your counties too. So, and sometimes people don't run for office again or whatever else, but you want to make sure that you set that precedent and create that culture of working together.
Yes.
To build that stronger community.
Yes, because working together is always far more powerful than seeing each other as
Right.
enemies and trying to be adversarial with each
Right.
other. That should be like a last resort.
Very,
when you're not,
Right.
Last resort when your government's not wanting to work with you, or your elected officials aren't working with you, then that comes. But you always be a team. Be a team.
And I was like, Michelle Frost and up there at the cattle growers, they stressed they were very appreciative that us county commissioners are joining the fight with, but they're very glad that we've joined the fight with them. They said that this never happened before. Very seldom does this ever happen. And so, that's the reason why they're working with us so good. And I'd like to keep that, you know, like I say, the more we join in the fight, come together, and not just for camaraderie, but for each other, because we all need
Yes.
each other.
Yes, we do.
This
Yes, we
world,
do.
we need each other in this world to stand together. And so I am very appreciative to cattle growers, and I cannot thank them enough for what they've
And
done
this is
for
the
us.
power of citizens getting engaged, whether it's through the
Yes.
Cattle Growers Association, a private citizen, elected officials. I mean, that was what the founding fathers dreamed of, and why they created the country that they did, was so that we are not under dictatorships, but we will be if we allow that to happen.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's, and so you've had a lot of responses from people in the county, like a lot of people that live in the county asking you questions, trying to be involved, asking how they can help. So I will ask that. So what's the next thing that people can do to help in this? Is there anything that citizens can do to help? You did make the ask about reaching out to city council. I think that is a completely really smart thing to do. What else do people do to help?
Pray for us.
Amen.
Yeah.
Pray for us, and don't give up, and words of encouragement.
Yes.
You know, and
Absolutely.
so and just don't give up on
Right.
us. Don't give up on us. And we don't know how long a fight this is going to be, but I'm in it for the long haul. And like I say, you know, if I feel like I need something, I will reach out
Mm-hmm.
for an ask.
Sure.
And so,
Please do. Please do.
but don't give up on us, and just pray for us.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's, you know, Annie may have something to say about what they could do. You know,
No, I think kind of what we talked about before we, like when we first walked in, when we were just kind of visiting, you know, we were talking about case law, and we were talking about, you know, different things that the Federal Register said and stuff like that. You know, don't take our word for it. Go
Good point.
read.
Go
Go
good
do
point.
your
Yes.
research.
Thank you.
Go
Yes.
look at.
You're
There's
right.
plenty of media articles. I think there was a lot of really good coverage. There was I believe it was a newspaper, the Plainsman Herald, and I'm not sure if that was out of Kansas or Colorado, but they give a really interesting history on public-private partnerships and eminent domain and things. And just another, if you don't want to hear it from us, do your research, which you should anyways.
It's so easy
Check
now
your own
anyway.
cinch, yes.
Yeah.
You
Check
don't have to
your
go to the
own
library.
cinch. Absolutely. It's right here, guys.
Right here
Yes.
with you all the time.
Yes.
And you can find a few
do
minutes.
your research.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
check it out.
Absolutely.
You know, and learn everything you can.
Absolutely. And I'll bring our new chair of the Republican Party here in Roosevelt County, Misty Canmore, was here, and she was the one that brought you the case law. So perfect case in point. A citizen that
Mhm.
cares about the area got on the computer and started doing some
Yeah,
research.
do
and
some
printed
digging.
Now you guys are going to have some more things to look at. I want to say ammo, but people get crazy. But yep, it gives you more information, more resources,
Yes.
you know, in moving forward with this and finding out there's case law about this in New Mexico. This addresses
Yeah.
this situation.
All over the
So if
country.
we all do that, bring all of our portion to the table, we can do this together.
Mhm.
There's no reason that we should have any Lone Rangers in this. God will bless a Lone Ranger, but how much better when it's
Oh,
when
yeah.
it's a group.
Right.
Yeah.
But anytime, like you say, this eminent domain is brought up, it's time to get involved.
Yes.
Because it's a scary thing, and
Yes.
you know, like us, you know, the big ranchers, and in small farmers or big or small ranchers, if this easement is going to go through your place, and it's eminent domain, you know, and they have an eminent domain coming there, you just fight them, and finally they're going to do it for the taking. They say fair market value, man, 30, bless you,
Sorry.
30, you know, 35 cents on the dollar, you know, and Roosevelt County has had its own share of eminent domain out here where the bombing range was. And
Right.
yes, they
right.
compensated those guys. But anyway, but it's, you know, these families that have had this land for generations, it's not
Yes.
about that. It's,
Yes.
it's just, anyway, just do the homework. I ask everybody, just please do the homework. Read the proposal. Read that proposal. And that's what, there's been lots of different interpretations of the black and white and on that proposal that I've heard, and I'm like, guys, it's right there in black and white. All you got to read, you just read it.
Mm-hmm.
I said the words are easily read right there of what they can and can't do and will do. And so, and a lot of people say, oh, this is just a 5 miles where they're going to see if they can figure out where they're going to take this deal at. Just do the homework and just read that proposal. Then you'll finally come to your conclusion, hey, this isn't that. This is where it's at.
Go talk to somebody at Roosevelt County Electric Co-op or
Farmers
Electric.
you know.
Ask them.
Yeah.
If you guys are going to put up a transmission line,
Yeah.
how do you go about doing that?
Mine is just a favorite. We're from the government. We're here to help.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just. I don't know. It makes you think sometimes, and I think, you know, for anybody that may not be in any issue that gets brought up, be it this or another, that somebody else may feel more strongly about than you do, or something like that. Really think to yourself, wouldn't you rather do your research, stand up,
Yes.
you know, engage in the process, and then it end up being a non-issue than not doing anything and just being railroaded?
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
come on.
At least, you know, no matter what the result is, at least you stood up.
You did.
You can sleep at night.
If
Your
you
family,
try.
your descendants can say,
Yeah.
you stood
Yeah,
up
they
and you
tried.
did
Right.
something.
If you
did
did
something.
all you can,
Yes.
you can rest at night and you can lay down. When you lay your head down at night, you can say, I did all I could.
Yes.
I did all I could. And did the outcome come out the way you like it? I hope so.
Sure.
But at least you can lay your head down at night and say, I did all I could.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
but anyway.
Well, I sure appreciate you guys coming and talking. It was a great conversation. We learned a lot. Thank you. I learned a lot, so thank you so very much. Is there anything else before we sign off? Is there anything else you'd like people to know or do?
I just like to say, I know you probably did learn a lot. We didn't have the answers. We didn't get the answers we wanted. We know the questions. We know the questions. We know the concerns. They know our questions and they know our concerns.
Mhm.
I have to trust the due process for a little bit.
Yes.
And have faith. I have to have faith.
I mean, I'm a millennial. I'm impatient as all get out.
Well,
I'm like,
me
oh, I
too.
need an answer today.
Me too.
I don't
Yo.
have to. And the business
Yes,
days,
we need to
please.
know it. You know, but since I've become a commissioner, we know that it ain't going to happen overnight.
That's right. It doesn't. It doesn't. It sure
And
doesn't.
so anyway, I've had to reel that rein in and say whoa for a little bit, and so anyway, but just I hope you citizens know that we know the questions, and yes, they know them now.
Good. Good.
They know the questions too. So.
And there is one last shout out that I wanted, because I was going to mention it earlier and I forgot, but Senator Pat Boone and Senator Pat Woods.
Yes, the
Yes.
memorial.
Yes, they did
Yes.
censor the
Incredible
memorial.
job.
Yes.
They did. They were
Yes.
trying to say, as at the memorial, saying as the state of
Yes.
New Mexico, that we opposed this
Yes.
transmission corridor, or at least the way they were going about doing it, and the amount of land, and
Exactly.
wanting answers and that sort of thing. And I will say, I watched. Did you get to watch any of the committee hearings?
Yes.
When they were in
A
committee
couple
hearings?
of them, I was on a plane to DC for another one of them. So
Right.
I mean, it's,
I was on the Zoom calls with, I guess, both of those committee hearings.
I think you were.
Were
'cause
you
you're one of
really?
the only one of us
Yes.
that could.
I was out in Oklahoma, but I was on the phone.
You know, you were sitting at the Lazy E on your
Yes,
phone.
I was at the
remember.
lazy. I was at the Lazy E at the championship time event championships, and I was on my phone there ready to testify, and my hat's off to Pat and Pat,
Yes.
and because it made it further than I thought it would,
And
and
it just raised that much more awareness.
Yes.
It did, and you know what I was
Yes.
surprised was how receptive
yes,
even our Democrat
Yeah.
legislators were
Well,
out
the
there.
impact this could have on our public lands.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and you know what
Yes.
was interesting was that one of the legislators having a Native American background and ancestry made an empathetic connection, you know, saying that, you know, I'm a Native American, I understand land being taken from you, and I will stand with you on this. And so it was neat to see that this is one area where maybe we can reach an understanding and be unified on.
Yeah. And since we're bringing up in Santa Fe, our state land commissioner, Stephanie Richards Garcia, she did not know about this project until halfway through legislative session right there about the
Really?
last of
That's when she
January.
found out
That's
about
when
it?
she found out about
Wow.
this.
Wow.
And she did not like it a bit because she'd been left out. And
mean,
Like I say, and that's just
run
how.
over the natural habitat of
Yes.
all of these other creatures that we're supposed to be,
And
preserving their space.
and like I say, there's some eyes got. You talk about the eyes getting opened up there. That's some of the eyes that opened up, and like I say, she wasn't happy either. She's but she had no idea.
Well, and none of the electric companies knew anything about it, right? I mean, Excel didn't know anything about it at first. We're not sure. Yeah, but some of them were a little bit surprised that when I was in February at that meeting, they seemed genuine and not knowing a whole lot about it either.
I know Excel did come out and say that we are no part of this whatsoever, and
I mean, they're working on their own things.
They're working on their own projects,
financing it themselves.
Yes, and
Right.
they sure wanted to exclude themselves from it. Nextera was another company, private entity, that wanted to exclude themselves from this because they're putting in a transmission line down the southern part of Roosevelt County from Dora down to Hobbs. They wanted to make sure they excluded from this, and so. But anyway, there's some people some private entities that's wanting to that's their business, and they want to be excluded from this project from this. And so anyway, but now I'll just let everybody know. I know we didn't come back with a lot of answers, but we came back with positive minds, and we're hopeful.
I think it sounds like a great trip that you guys had. Thank you again.
Besides getting stuck, but I was positive about it.
I started to have a meltdown right there. We sat on the tarmac out there for 3 hours, 3.5 hours.
In the dark, because they had to close the blinds. Also no AC.
Turned off the air conditioners on the plane,
Oh my goodness.
So bad.
This is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is 3:30 in the afternoon, and we sat out there till 6 o'clock.
We drive around once or twice, and then we back up in the box again.
I started to have a meltdown, and she seen me. I didn't say a word. She just looked over at me. She said, "She better not." She said, "There's things to be thankful for. You better be thankful you're right here."
There's a reason we are right
She kept saying, "There is a reason we're right here."
That's right.
And she showed us and then she got to showing us the tornado that went through St. Louis and the tornadoes that was coming into to Tennessee and Kentucky right there. Our plane was headed to Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
And then on to Dallas. And so, and that's my first time to ever get hung up. And I'm telling you,
now.
but I'm telling you, when they said we're going to unload you, we got over there got back over to the gate. Well, there's 8 or 9 gates right there.
Yeah.
6 of us planes were unloading, but there's also eight gates that was waiting to board. So you put all those people into one place.
It was wild.
It was wild.
Wow.
But it was all good. It was all good.
No bad. I had nothing, thankfully.
Yeah, her luggage.
Thankfully, Jeff Decker had an extra toothbrush.
Yes.
and
that's our thankful saving grace. Our roommates, we bunked with
I bunked
Cattle
with
Growers.
Jerry Rush.
Yes, and I bunked with Jeff Decker from down from Tatum.
And they weren't supposed to leave till the next day
The
anyways.
next day. So everything, it all worked out.
It does.
The Lord has a plan, and that was part of it. And
Got to meet a cool Capitol policeman that saw us sitting on the rail over there, and I thought we were fixing to get in trouble.
Because they get to a point and walking, I was like, oh, here we go.
Right. You got on your phone and you turned the other way, and I had to talk to him.
He was pointing at her. I was like, he's after her, He ain't after
but
me.
it was actually his cowboy hat, and the guy, he comes up.
He was from Athens.
He was
Texas.
from Athens.
Oh my
He thought we were
goodness.
his kind of people.
Yeah.
And he was,
Aww.
it made my heart happy.
Yeah.
You could tell he was like, I can trust these people right here.
Oh,
And
that's
so
sweet guy.
I thought we was in trouble for sitting on the rail.
Yeah, because we just kind of set our bags down and then got on the rail to kind of take
Yeah.
a breather before getting in an Uber again, because it was like, oh, buddy.
And I'm sorry for not having any notes.
Yeah.
I was at the Library of Congress and sitting
Oh,
there
yeah.
sitting down on the bench there inside the library. They have a wooden bench in the circle right there.
I was getting my library card.
Yeah, and so I was inside there and I had my jacket. I was hot. We was sweating, hot and humid sucker there that morning. So I had my jacket, my suit jacket off, and I'm sitting there taking pictures of the library there. Finally, this little security guy walks up there and says, "Sir, you got to go. You can only be in here for 5 minutes." I just looked at him. I said, "Seriously?" I said, there wasn't 15 people in there. And I'm just sitting there by myself on this bench. There ain't nobody else sitting around. He says, "Sir, you got to go." I said, "Really?" He said, "Sir, you cannot be in here no longer than 5 minutes." So I said, all right. I grabbed my jacket, took off, and left my portfolio all right there with all my stuff in it. And
Oh my goodness.
thankful Annie,
Got you.
she's got my back.
Got you.
She's got my back.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
so anyway,
The clerk, that's my
like I said,
job.
it's all good. It's all good.
Well, I'm glad you had yours so that we had something to go by.
Yeah.
You'll get it. You'll get it back.
I know, I kind of thought it would show up in the mail by now, but here's the other deal. So he had his business cards with him, but he kept forgetting to put them in his portfolio because I said if somebody found mine, they'd realize there's a stack of Annie cards.
Mhm.
It probably belongs to Annie. But he didn't have any of his own cards in the thing.
So
Learning experience.
I'm learning to carry some business cards.
There
I've
you
never carried a business card in my life, and anyway.
Yeah.
Nobody wants
You're
to talk to
important
Roy.
now.
Nobody wants to talk to Roy Lee. That's
I don't think
fine.
you do.
And that's fine. That's fine.
We did.
That's
Anyway,
right.
but I appreciate you.
Yeah.
You bet.
Appreciate you.
Thank you guys for coming down and
Appreciate
making time for
everything you guys
this
do.
Yes.
and making time for people to learn what's going on. It's been very important. We've had phone calls and people really wanting to know. So thank you so much for doing that. And it's been a pleasurable conversation. And I
Yes.
hope to have you guys on again in the future, whether it's about this or anything else.
We can talk about elections.
Yes! Would love that. We'll have to bring over our county clerk. And
I love
just have a
Andy.
chat.
Yes, we totally
Absolutely,
could. I
we
would
could
love
do that. That would be well.
Yeah.
I'll have to keep that. in
I
mind.
love
That's a good idea.
elections. We can talk about elections all day long.
I'm glad.
Yes.
Yeah, we're glad we have one that thinks and cares
Yep.
about elections. That's a good thing.
Yeah, our neighbors.
Well, we want to thank you guys for joining us. We're going to wrap it up here, and please share this. Please share this conversation and this interview with anybody that you think would be affected or be interested in it. We really want to educate people and help them be informed about what's going on right in their backyard, and more importantly, what they can do about it. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.